You know, we went and told one community around a lake that they had to either work with us to create a sanitary sewage district, or else we were gonna make them all go to holding tanks. They said, you can't do that. Yes, under our own governmental authority we can, because we pass laws and ordinances just like any other government. Self-governing doesn't just mean you run stuff, it means you exercise authority in a competent way, right? We started to grow because money from the government was unreliable. We started our own businesses so we can create our own funding source that isn't reliant on the federal government. Now it's about half and half funded by the tribe, half funded by the federal or state governments. One of the issues around the numbers of children in out-of-home placement, we used our governmental authority to start licensing foster care families that were from our own community, so we didn't have to lose our children to white families. And we put a system of social workers in place that work directly with county workers, and we say, no, that's one of our kids. We'll be primary, you can help. And then we use their money to pay for our families to take care of our children so they stay in the community. We're the second largest employer in northern Minnesota, not native employer. We're just the second largest employer of any employer in northern Minnesota. The only one that beats us is a health clinic system that has hospitals and regional clinics all over northern Minnesota. Our economic impact in the region is about $350 million a year, making us a huge economic driver, which gives us more clout with local political entities. So when we said we want a sanitary district, the local county and township said, well, I guess we need to work together to take care of our citizens. We have for-profit enterprises. We have 2 casino resorts. You know, I know you think, casinos, they make all this money. You know, they're in northern Minnesota. There's not a lot of people in northern Minnesota. Do they make money? Yes. Do they make tons and tons of money? They're no MGM. You know, it's more like the Pokies. Well, maybe a little bigger than the Pokies. We were methodical about continuing to invest in our own ability to build our own treasury. Now we have a propane company, a construction company, a sand and gravel operation, timber, a lot of it based on natural resources, work. I mean, rather than white guys coming in and taking our stuff and taking it off reservation and making money off our stuff, now we're keeping it in our own community, and those jobs are ours. And the treasury's coming back to us, but we're managing it sustainably. We hire our own construction company to build our own houses for our housing program. We have an integrated resource management plan for all of our homelands where we update it every 10 years, so we know what the plan is in terms of what's going to be cut when and what species are under threat, and it's climate resilient, so we're planting new species that we never used to see because we also take care of our water. Now those are very Western notions of governance, right? And you're using modern day scientific terms to do what we always have been, which is caretakers of the land. But because we're able to translate our traditional practices and also use some of those Western kind of notions, it means we're super credible with other decision makers in other jurisdictions, right? So I usually use an example. The Me Too movement, right? Around women's rights and this notion of what is consent. And it's no means no. And no means no whether it's in the beginning, the middle, or the end, right? No always means no until you say yes. That's self-determination, right? So unless those words are actually coming out of your lips and saying we consent or we approve, or even better, it's our decision and we're going to do it under our own authority, then it's not self-determination. Consensus is tough because eventually a decision needs to be made, and what you end up having is dissenters end up sometimes having to capitulate just to get to that 100%, and now they're disenfranchised, right? And they weren't heard, and then they feel not okay about the decision. That will kind of fester for a while until because it'll create real conflict down the road. How did you used to make decisions a long time ago? Is that a good option for you, or is it something more modern and more suitable to the way your community looks today? So there's both formal and informal ways of exercising leadership within Indigenous communities. And so whether it's a combination of your traditional ways or it's a committee structure. I've had awfully good positions in my life and ways of having influence. There's a true conflict of interest, there's service to community. Now, why wouldn't someone who's built a career where they can earn $200,000, they also means that they have some knowledge. And they are still a citizen of your nation. Do they abdicate their right to be involved in their nation because they have a good job that serves their community in a different capacity? If you're looking at accommodating dissent, then you're going to be a minority rule nation, right? You only have to disagree to make a decision. And that's almost like not making a decision, right? Because I'm not, maybe consensus is the way, but it's also really unrealistic. So if you exploit division, then that becomes just stagnating, right? So a part of your decision making is how you resolve conflict, and does everybody else always have to agree? Government is generally the good of the whole, right? It should be if it's ethical, right? But individually, that doesn't mean I agree with it, but at some point you need to be able to speak with one voice. Because if you can't figure out how to manage this relationship with Victoria, where you are showing a united front, they will exploit your divisions. We have this National Congress of American Indians. They're the largest organization of where we act like a confederacy. And so how we treat it as individual tribes, we do not ever abdicate our sovereignty to another tribe. Ever. But where we can agree, we work with them. And where we do not, we speak with our own voice as a sovereign nation. And the National Congress of American Indians understands that. While they are a representative of us as a body, they speak for no one individual tribe unless you specifically say so. It has to be community driven and community owned and a fit for your community, because otherwise you just got like these stray dogs running off, right? You have to believe in it, right? Not agree with it, but believe in it and feel that it's truly representational and driven from the people and what you need. It sounds overly simplistic in some ways, but this is what you're talking about, some really fundamental questions, I guess I could add in there, what do you want responsibility for? I mean, what's the whole point of this, right? I mean, you don't want to be a government just to do service delivery. That's not the point. You might as well start a nonprofit, right? I mean, you're here to manage. Manage isn't even the best word. You're here to preserve your peoples, right? And your identity and your culture, and to move them to a place from deficit to thriving, right? But as authentically, Indigenous people, right? I mean, it sounds kind of lofty, but otherwise, what's the point, right? You might as well just be some guy on Melbourne Street, right? Or on one of Melbourne streets. So, these are kind of really basic questions, but if you haven't taken the time within your communities to kind of ponder what's the whole point of this, then you're just, like you were saying earlier, chasing those dollars, right? Now you're the nonprofit that you're just talking about. And then you get into you start with this. Then you start putting the pieces into place of how are we going to comport ourselves. I was challenging Auntie outside. She was talking about Victoria and Tasmania and constitutional authorities. Are you going to write yourselves a constitution? Is that your organizing document? Is it an articles of incorporation? Are you going to start another entity? Well, and the other question to ask are, what are the implications of it? Are you getting rid of some of the rights that you would have had later? in order to access resources, or are there ways you can do both, right?